WNBA star Brittney Griner pleaded guilty to drug charges in Moscow court Thursday. Her attorney saying after the court hearing that the basketball star admitted the vape canisters were hers, but she brought them to Russia unintentionally. This comes as calls are growing louder for the president to intervene, as over 1,000 black women signed a letter to President Biden and Vice President Harris this week, urging the administration to make a deal to bring Griner home safely. Joining me now is senior editor and insider Katia Tubman and MSNBC political analyst Juanita Tolliver. Thank you both for joining. So, Katie, I want to start with you first. Do you think this guilty plea will help her sentencing?
It actually will. I mean, we've heard, Michael, for weeks now that the family has been talking about what would it mean to have Griner plead guilty. And really, it was the idea that you would have to move out of the way any chance of her not being brought home. The idea would be that if she pleads guilty, then there's room for negotiations between the U.S. and Russia to negotiate a prisoner swap in her place so she can actually come home. But that would not have happened if she did not take fault in what charges were brought against her. As we've heard even from folks who have been detained, for example, Trevor Reed, who was released this April in also a prisoner swap, that justice in Russia, as he has said, is non-existent. And so in this case, all he would have hoped for is that she would plead guilty, and then the U.S. would work really hard to bring her back home. Negotiations aren't confirmed, and there's no way of knowing that this guilty plea will move towards bringing her home in a prisoner swap. But this was honestly the best chance they had in making sure to move this forward, as opposed to stretching it out for years in the case of Trevor Reed and other detainees in Russia.
No, Katie, that's a really, really great point. So, Juanita, it's taken nearly 5 months since Griner has been detained for the Biden administration to finally speak to her wife and write a letter to Griner herself. To me, Juanita, I got to tell you, that's baffling to me, because I sort of have the position, let's say this was a Brett Favre in Russia who was arrested. It wouldn't take 5 months. It would have probably taken a matter of hours. Why in the world does it appear, at least to me outwardly looking in, that as it pertains to issues that directly impact black people, particularly black women, who, by the way, helped Joe Biden become President Biden, that the president doesn't always address these issues with urgency?
That part, sure, Michael. I just keep flashing back to that night in November when the election was called for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And President Biden got on the stage and said, "Thank you, black women. I would not be here without you." But now we have this lackluster kind of dragging his heels energy, even to call Cherelle Griner, BG's wife. And what's frustrating to me is that I know there are so many moving pieces in the background at State Department, at National Security Council, but the president could have called in February and said, "We're working on this. We're working on this day and night, and we're going to fight to get Brittney home." But the refusal to do that for what Cherelle Griner described as 140 days since she's been detained, it shows this kind of haphazard, like, you know, half in, half out energy, when he should be putting his full force there, not only for BG, but also for those other detainees you mentioned, like Paul Whelan, like Mark Fogel, and getting them home and out of this Russian detention, because they can be described at this point with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine as political detainees, as political prisoners. And the president and the White House need to do everything that they can to get them home, but also communicate with all of their families. All of their families should have gotten a call by now. And we know Paul Whelan's family has also been reaching out to the White House repeatedly and hasn't got a call back. So I need the White House to get on this, not only for BG, but for any American in Russia.
No, I agree with you, Juanita. They appear to be dragging their feet for some odd reason. Katie, on Wednesday, Griner's coach spoke to MSNBC about the inequalities of men's and women's sports. Let's take a listen.
They make 4 to 5 times as much money playing in Russia. Well, not anymore, probably, but in other countries overseas. And that is a function of our economic system and the attention that media provides and the money that comes from television coverage contracts that the men's athletes get to benefit from. And so our athletes have to play year round, which is wear and tear on their bodies, and they play all over the world. These are different conditions than here in the United States, and maybe not as safe for Americans, especially Americans that are you know, a little bit different than everyone else.
So, Katie, I think she raised a lot of interesting points. Nationally and also internationally, you've seen a lot of women in sports who are fighting for better pay. So that, like Brittney Griner, you don't find them having to go to places like Russia. I mean, what are your thoughts and your reaction to what the coach said?
I mean, when it first came out that she had been detained, I mean, that's weeks after she was actually detained that we actually learned that she was arrested. There was uproar into the fact that she was there in the first place. And as we started hearing more information and releasing more information about what it means to be a female athlete, especially in the U.S., who has to play off season in another country, whether it be Russia or Turkey or any other country that treats them like celebrities, treats them with the status that they deserve, even as someone like Griner, who is an Olympic gold medalist and has the status of an all-star NBA player, to know that they have to make more of themselves and do more for themselves outside of the U.S. to even come close to making what male athletes in the U.S. make. It's a travesty, really, and it actually just points out what it means to be not only a woman in the U.S., a black woman in the U.S., a black woman athlete at that, and then what it means to be that abroad. This is going to change the conversation about what it means to be a female athlete in the U.S. going forward and what should be done to change their status.
So, Juanita, in the letter from over 1,000 black women, and by the way, there should also be 1,000 black men, Juanita, joining that letter, they call out Biden for his rhetoric not aligning with the actions taking place to date. They talk about how Biden cannot afford to disappoint black people in yet another way, especially during a midterm year. And Juanita, you've talked about this eloquently. Joe Biden had a 90+% approval with black people. It's declined about 30% now. I mean, is the administration not reading the tea leaves here? What's going on?
I need the administration to show up like they expect these 1,200 black women who, let's be real, these are some women who are powerhouse advocates, organizers who will turn out voters throughout the country in the midterms. And they need to deliver for them on top of for Brittney, right? Because taking that for granted is something that the Democratic Party cannot afford, especially as we're seeing the slate of Republicans who are Trump-backed and who are winning these primaries come forward, and the threats from Republicans based on what they would do if they take back the House, if they take back the Senate. And I don't think the White House needs to take this for granted. And so in their communications, in addition to what they're saying to Brittney Griner's family, in addition to what they're doing behind the scenes, they need to keep these women apprised, because these black women who wrote that letter know their power. They know that Biden is there because of them and their work and their hard work and effort. And so what they're saying by writing that letter is we're holding you accountable as well, in addition to the families who need your help. And we've got an eye on you, because as you opened the show, Sir Michael, about the fact that this White House doesn't seem to be delivering on a range of issues disproportionately harming black and brown communities. This is just one more thing on top of that. And so the White House better take stock and they better course correct, because what this letter represents is the power that will potentially stay at home or not work as hard in these midterm elections in November.
No, look, Juanita, Katie, I thank you both. And I think you both are right. I think black women are saying we demand action. We're not going to take promises anymore. We want to see you deliver something for us.
Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.